Welcome, Winnie.
Thank you. Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, young women leaders who are here, representatives of civil society, UN colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming to this important breakfast. Great to see you. Before we start, I would like to have been introduced. I'm Winnie Byanyima. I am the leader of the UN's efforts to end the AIDS epidemic by 2020. I bring together colleagues from 11 entities of the United Nations to coordinate the global response. I'm a firm believer that health is a human right and that education is a fast track to health and rights. Before we start, let me let everyone know that we have interpretation in English and French. So there's a reminder here that you can pick up your little piece and get the language you need. Allow me to give you a snippet of the HIV statistics from our 2022 data, last 2 years now, to really underscore the crisis that we have for adolescent girls and young women, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Every 3 minutes, a girl or young woman was newly infected with HIV in 2022, every 3 minutes. We're talking of 3,100 infections every week in sub-Saharan Africa. Adolescent girls and young women account for more than 77% of new infections in this age cohort of 15 to 24 years. 3 out of 4 new infections are girls or young women. This is unacceptable because each of these new infections is preventable, And keeping girls in school is a critical element of HIV prevention. We know, we have the evidence that when a girl completes secondary education, even if it's not even high quality, but she's in school, her risk of HIV infection is reduced by up to 50%, Yet millions of girls on the continent do not have that opportunity of completing secondary education. We must take immediate action to change this situation, get girls back to school and ensure that they complete secondary education. This requires commitments that have been made by African member states to address gender inequalities, to address stigma and discrimination that fuels this infection, that these commitments are fulfilled. There is progress in Africa, don't get me wrong, but it simply isn't fast enough. That's why we have this initiative we call Education Plus. It's co-led by my colleagues, sisters, heads of 4 UN agencies, Catherine Russell here, the Executive Director of UNICEF, UN Women, represented here by the Deputy Executive Director, Nyarazai, UNFPA, and UNESCO. We all happen to be women, leaders of these entities. And we are working with the African Union, as well as, of course, we are together supporting 15 African heads of state who are already championing this initiative and implementing it in their countries. They are bringing together the different sectors: education, health, social protection, finance, the key sectors that need to come together to get this agenda going in their countries. Benin, Botswana, Cameroon, Eswatini, Gabon, Gambia, Kenya, Lesotho, Malawi, Senegal, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. These are the countries that are involved in it right now. Together with donors, and welcome Minister from Luxembourg, one of the key donors supporting this initiative, civil society, girls' movements, and as the UN, the African governments I've mentioned are putting in place the right policies and working to step up their investments to guarantee free secondary education for all the children, boys and girls. They are creating violence-free school environments, providing sexuality education that is appropriate, enabling access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, services that are appropriate and close enough and friendly to young people, and introducing effective school-to-work transitions for girls. School-to-work transitions, to have a skill, to be able to come to the market and earn and not have to depend on a little money that a blesser man has given. So to avoid transactional sex. So a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers who will share this morning how they and their countries are working to ensure that every single African girl completes secondary school safe, strong, and empowered. So let me set the scene for the discussions today. The aim of this session is to do two things, and thank you for coming so early. To galvanize decision makers from governments, key stakeholders, development partners, to scale up investments, to put in place policies and actions on education, to pull together multi-sectoral interventions that will work for girls and young women to prevent HIV and achieve other outcomes as well. We know from our evidence, you put a girl to school to complete secondary education, you also reduce teenage pregnancy, you reduce early marriage, you reduce sexual violence, you empower her for having a healthy family, you grow the economy. The social and economic benefits are huge. Here today, we are focusing on preventing HIV infection. But let's not forget that the social and economic benefits of this initiative go way beyond preventing HIV. So this week, 68th session of the Commission on the Status of Women begins. It's critical that during the CSW, that the world recommits to preventing and responding to HIV for adolescent girls and young women, particularly in Africa. This year's theme focuses on addressing poverty and financing for gender equality. That enables to focus on the multiple structural factors that increase HIV risk for young women and girls. At the center of all of this are inequalities. To address the challenge of women and girls and HIV, we need to close the inequalities for girls. We need to pay attention to the economic issues, to social protection, to access to service, gender-based violence, and harmful social cultural practices. Education is a key pathway of preventing HIV. For girls, we know that when girls, I repeat, complete secondary education, they are less vulnerable to HIV. So today, we will hear from distinguished speakers. They will tell us how their countries are doing this. We will hear from Her Excellency, Yuriko Bax. I'm sure I've not said that name right. But Minister for Gender Equality and Diversity, Luxembourg, will hear from my sister Catherine Russell, UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UNICEF. We will hear from, I'm not seeing her here, but I think we were expecting her, Her Excellency Lindy Wezulu, Minister of Social Development, Republic of South Africa. We'll hear from Her Excellency Aissata Mahoy, Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs, Sierra Leone. We'll hear from Ms. Catherine Nyambura, who is a Programs Director at Athena Network, a girls' rights network in Africa. And we will hear, I hope, from Honorable Betty Ongom, Minister for Gender from Uganda, and Her Excellency Veronique Tony-Fode, Minister of Social Development, of Social Affairs and Microfinance, Republic of Benin. Forgive me if I didn't say the name right. We'll hear from my sister Nyarazai, UN Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Executive Director for UN Women. That is our list. I'm going to sit down now and invite our first speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Meanwhile, keep having your breakfast. Our first speaker is going to be, I'm going to call you Yuriko. Is it fine? Okay. Minister for Gender Equality and Diversity, Luxembourg. Welcome. You can take, can I call you? Yes.
You can call me Yuriko if I can call you Winnie. Good morning, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. Winnie, ministers, directors, thank you for being here so early this morning. My colleagues, and I thank them, have prepared a perfect, very long speech for me this morning. I prefer to be here to listen. I have, over many, many years, been fighting for women's rights and gender equality. But I'm only since 3 months Minister for Gender Equality and Diversity of Luxembourg. I'm also Minister of Defense and Minister for Mobility and Public Works. But diversity and gender equality is, for me, just as important as these other important portfolios. So as I said, I'm really here to listen this morning. Yes, Luxembourg has been a long-standing partner of UNAIDS, and very proudly so. Luxembourg has been a long-standing supporter and partner in the fight against HIV and AIDS, and we have listened to the statistics that Winnie underlined, and they are absolutely deplorable. So we are convinced that addressing gender inequalities and discrimination will be key to end AIDS as a public health threat. Luxembourg decided to support the Education Plus initiative a couple of years ago, and I think what's absolutely essential here that we all together walk the talk in prevention, in gender equality, and in human rights. And we need to start early. We need to start extremely early in the lives of our children, especially of our girls. And of course, there are many solutions that are at hand, and that's why we are working together. Completing secondary education, helping young girls reduce the chance of contracting AIDS. If we see that secondary education has been completed, we see the results that that brings with it. Comprehensive sexual education that also brings about a shift in attitudes, which is so important if we want to have safer behavior. And of course, adopting legal frameworks and adapting them to specific situations is also essential. But of course, the context within which we are working is absolutely challenging. We see setbacks in human rights everywhere. Progress reversed by crisis, being it pandemic, being it wars, being it fiscal crisis. No crisis is gender neutral, and we see the immediate impacts also in this field. What I find extremely worrying is also the surge in extreme conservative policies on sexual and also on reproductive health and rights. This is across the world, but I think it's also in sub-Saharan Africa very, very worrying. So this is something to consider and take into consideration. I think we must avoid going back in time. We need to empower girls because it's the only way that we will have women empowered afterwards. Investing in girls and young women will be key. We know that, we say that, then we need to do something about it concretely. We really commend the commitments that the 15 champion countries have undertaken. Like I said from the beginning, I'm here to listen to the experience, to listen how this program has brought about change, to listen to the ministers, to listen to the young women leaders also championing this initiative. Because hopefully, as a result, there will also be other countries joining in supporting this initiative. And hopefully also, as a result, we can make this important program grow. I'm on your side. Let's do this together. And yes, let's have this program grow because it's absolutely essential for the future of sub-Saharan Africa and countries beyond that. And we need to start with women. SDG number 5 is pivotal, and no other SDG will ever be reached if we don't continue to work and to improve and to have success, concrete success, as far as SDG number 5 is concerned. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Minister Yuriko, sorry, I'm going to use first names, has been Minister of Defense, Minister of Mobility and Public Works, now Minister for Gender Equality, and knows the UN, has been permanent representative here. Thank you so much for what you've said and Luxembourg's support for girls' rights. I now want to invite my sister, Catherine Russell, UN Under-Secretary General and UNICEF Executive Director. I want to say something about Catherine. She's served decades of experience in public service, was coming from the Biden administration. What I liked so much to say to you about her is she was the principal architect of the groundbreaking US global strategy to empower adolescent girls. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Winnie. Thanks so much. So nice to be here. So nice to see you all. Minister, I'm so fascinated by your title and the fact that you did defense and gender. I love that. I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. I think that shows some real progress in the world. So happy to see that. And Winnie, thank you so much. Excellencies, colleagues, it's really good to be here with you today for this discussion. Winnie, I thank you so much and UNAIDS for organizing this event. And thank you to the distinguished CSW delegates for your participation and your commitment to ending AIDS by 2030. I also wish to acknowledge the potential of Education Plus to accelerate actions and investments to prevent HIV, particularly through working with governments and partners like UNICEF to expand quality access to quality education for girls. We at UNICEF are very proud to be part of this initiative and its work to put girls front and center as creators, as leaders, and as stakeholders to whom we are all accountable. Excellencies, all of you know, girls and women continue to be disproportionately impacted by HIV. Globally, they account for 71% of new HIV infections in 10 to 19-year-olds. And in sub-Saharan Africa, 9 out of 10 new HIV infections are among girls between the ages of 15 and 19. And those, when you stop to think about it, are pretty staggering numbers and quite alarming for the girls who live there. These figures are certainly great concern, and they're a clear indication that adolescent girls face unique vulnerabilities rooted in pervasive gender inequality. And that's why the initiatives like Education Plus are so important. They promote multi-sectoral, which is always my least favorite word, but it is kind of the only word that describes this, comprehensive programming to address the specific needs and vulnerabilities of adolescent girls that can help to prevent new HIV infections and improve their overall health and well-being. HIV prevention, care, and treatment have been central to UNICEF's work with adolescent girls for decades. Just yesterday, we hosted a really wonderful event, which I know a few of you were with us. And the great thing about it was that it was really run by adolescent girls. I mean, it was just fantastic. And everyone who was there just was reminded of how great these young women are and how much they have to add to the discussion. We launched something called the 5 Key Program Solutions for Investment in Adolescent Girls that reflect our determination to end AIDS in children once and for all. And these solutions were created based on feedback that we received through an extensive poll we did of over 500,000 young people, boys and girls, young adults, and it was really fantastic to get their feedback. And guided by these inputs, UNICEF and our partners will use the key program solutions to reach 350 million adolescent girls with a package of essential services and support. The first of these is expanding access to comprehensive adolescent girl-centered health services, including HPV, HIV, and maternal mortality. And of course, these are all linked together. This also includes ensuring that both boys and girls have access to reliable, age-appropriate information about their own bodies, their health, and their nutrition. Second, and really critical to this, is investing in girls' education and skills development, including STEM, financial literacy, and vocational and leadership training. This reflects UNICEF's commitment to meeting the goals of Education Plus and to supporting adolescent girls' transition to employment. I used to serve as a U.S. ambassador for women and girls, and people would always ask me, what if you had to do just one thing? If you had one thing you could do? And I was like, well, you can't just do one thing because, of course, we have to have a multi-sectoral approach. But if I had one thing, I would say keep these girls in school as long as you can. I've seen it everywhere. It makes a huge difference. And I think, we're committed to doing all of the pieces because obviously girls have to be healthy to do well in school, but I think keeping them in school is absolutely critical. Finally, we know that our HIV prevention work must also address critical protection issues for girls. I mean, again, it's hard for girls to do anything when they're facing challenges like child marriage, FGM, and sexual and gender-based violence, all of which increase girls' vulnerability to HIV. Fortunately, social protection packages and economic empowerment opportunities offer real solutions to these problems. Plus packages that we're talking about today, targeting adolescents and cash transfers more broadly, have been shown to significantly increase girls' usage of reproductive and sexual health services, as well as improve their school enrollment and attendance. Excellencies, we can make HIV a disease of the past. I have no doubt about that. But we can't do it without listening to, understanding, and supporting young girls and women to take the lead. Looking ahead, UNICEF is urging government leaders to support the multi-sectoral agenda on girls, education, and HIV. For us, this means working across government line ministries to communicate, coordinate, and synergize all of these efforts so that the government ministers and leaders understand how these things are so vitally connected. Now is the time to ensure that every girl lives a life free from violence, with unhindered access to quality education, to sexual and reproductive health rights and services, and with meaningful opportunities to lead a productive life. You can count on UNICEF as a steadfast partner in our collective effort to make this a reality, and I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you for your support in this effort as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. Every day you lead us in the UN on children's rights agenda. You inspire and you push us. Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Veronique Tonyfode, Minister. Did I say it right? You're laughing at me. Her Excellency, the Minister of Social Affairs and Microfinance of the Republic of Benin, Social Affairs and Microfinance. Veronique is an obstetrician gynecologist, has been a researcher, and has worked for decades on the rights, sexual and reproductive health rights, and family education. That's the background. Welcome, Veronique. Please, I want to warn you, those of you who are English speakers, that Veronique may be going to speak French, so have your, yeah, thank you.
OK. Excellence, Madame la directrice exécutive de ONU-SIDA. Avant tout, je voudrais vous remercier sincèrement pour l'invitation. Même si c'est la dernière minute, on a répondu présente parce que c'est un sujet préoccupant pour le Bénin, l'éducation des filles. Honorables mesdames et messieurs, les ministres et autorités, chers participants, donc la présentation a déjà été faite. Je viens du Bénin, Affaires sociales et microfinances depuis 5 ans et également 2 ans à la tête du CTS de l'autonomisation des femmes au niveau de l'Union africaine. Alors, en 2016, l'état des lieux au Bénin présentait des écarts importants entre filles et garçons. Donc, la déscolarisation est très importante et serait due aux problèmes socioculturels, à la pauvreté des ménages, mais également au mariage précoce et ou forcé et aux violences basées sur le genre en milieu scolaire, aux conditions de séjour en milieu scolaire et l'étroitesse des opportunités qui s'offrent donc à la fille en fin de son cursus. Alors, pour faire en sorte que toutes les filles et tous les garçons deviennent égaux en éducation, des réformes institutionnelles structurantes ont été entreprises. D'abord, l'exonération des frais de scolarisation des filles au niveau du premier cycle du secondaire, du collège, le renforcement des compétences de vie courantes des adolescentes pour l'autoprotection contre les violences et les abus, l'introduction de la santé sexuelle et de la reproduction dans l'enseignement qui prend en compte une large sensibilisation sur le VIH-Sida, d'autant plus qu'une étude récente chez nous a montré la féminisation de la transmission de l'infection chez les jeunes, la dotation des écoles primaires publiques en cantine scolaire, parce qu'un repas chaud par jour, c'est beaucoup pour des familles qui parfois ne peuvent pas le donner à leurs enfants. Et donc, maintenir les filles dans le système éducatif, parce qu'il faut savoir que lorsqu'il y a vulnérabilité, c'est d'abord les filles qui abandonnent l'école avant les garçons. La réduction des charges des ménages par les transferts monétaires aux ménages dans les zones défavorisées, Cash Plus Care notamment, et aussi le projet Souhait de la Banque mondiale qui nous a aidés dans ce cadre. Le financement des alternatives éducatives, y compris l'alphabétisation au profit des déscolarisés. Mais malgré ces efforts et les progrès notés, des disparités persistent dans les départements entre les filles et les garçons et nous avons la situation de l'éducation des filles qui reste globalement défavorable en comparaison à celle des garçons, comme indiqué par les valeurs de l'indice de parité. Donc, pour montrer notre engagement sur le sujet, le gouvernement a organisé un forum national en mars 2022 sur l'accélération de l'éducation des filles au Bénin, à Cotonou. Et donc, sous le patronage de la vice-présidente de la République, qui est une femme, le collège des ministres sectoriels, dont celui des affaires sociales et tous les partenaires de l'école, les participants en tout cas, outre le diagnostic qui a été posé, nous avons identifié qu'il y a le renforcement de la redevabilité, de l'engagement et de la synergie des interventions, le renforcement et de la diversification, de la disponibilité et de l'offre éducative pour le maintien des filles à l'école et l'accompagnement des adolescentes dans la transition école-emploi, leur autonomisation et surtout leur leadership. Mesdames et messieurs, si l'éducation est l'arme la plus puissante qu'on puisse utiliser pour changer le monde, Nelson Mandela, ou encore éduquer une fille, c'est éduquer un village, ça c'est un proverbe africain, le gouvernement du Bénin a fait l'option de créer les conditions idoines à l'éducation des filles telles que la poursuite de la campagne Tolérance zéro au mariage et à tous les abus, violences faites aux filles, la sensibilisation dans les lycées sur le renforcement de l'estime de soi, la déconstruction des stéréotypes qui existent de façon culturelle, la lutte contre les grossesses précoces, les IST et le VIH, ainsi que le harcèlement sexuel en milieu scolaire. Au cours des 5 dernières années, j'ai pris part moi-même dans tous les départements de mon pays à ces sensibilisations de masse qui ont une spécificité parce que les enfants, les filles écrivent leurs préoccupations sur des bouts de papier de façon anonyme et là, on peut lire beaucoup de choses et en même temps pouvoir leur apporter des réponses et les aider à grandir mentalement et à fuir donc les pièges qui peuvent être des entraves à leur parcours. Alors, nous avons également beaucoup évolué sur le plan du renforcement juridique des lois et nous avons depuis 2021 une loi qui porte des dispositions spéciales de répression contre les violences qui sont faites aux femmes à raison du sexe et qui interdit toute relation amoureuse entre un enseignant ou un formateur et son élève, même s'il y a compliance, c'est-à-dire qu'ils vont directement, l'enseignant va directement au tribunal. Et donc, nous avons aussi par cette loi criminalisé encore davantage mariage précoce, mutilation génitale, etc. Donc, il y a aussi maintenant la modification du Code des personnes et de la famille qui nous a permis de permettre la transmission du patronyme par la femme. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il faut savoir que chez nous, culturellement, c'était très important que ce soit les garçons qui transmettent le nom et donc qui portent un peu tout le pouvoir. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on délaisse les filles. Donc, en remettant à égalité cette transmission qui est possible par la loi, ça change quelque chose. Et nous avons maintenant des mesures spéciales pour encourager les élèves filles à s'engager dans les filières scientifiques, la formation technique, etc. Bon, le Forum national sur l'accélération de l'éducation des filles au Bénin a surtout abouti sur le programme national de l'éducation et du bien-être des filles. Mesdames et messieurs, au Bénin, nous sommes conscients que investir sur la santé et l'éducation des filles, c'est un levier de développement. Certain. Alors, on ne peut pas construire le développement de notre pays en laissant de côté 53% de la population. Donc, c'est pour cela que le gouvernement est de plus en plus engagé pour son choix vers une discrimination positive pour les femmes, au profit des femmes, au profit des filles et du genre. Et le train est en marche, donc chez nous, et nous acceptons toute contribution pour mobiliser les 140 millions de dollars prévu pour l'horizon 2028 du programme d'accélération. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you so much. We learn a lot about the policies, the laws, and the investments needed to get it right for girls. Thank you. Our next speaker. Oh, no, before we get our next speaker, let us first see a little video.
Working with girls for the past 5 years, I think it's about self-confidence and self-worth. Most of the time, girls don't have that confidence to own their space, to own their sexuality. They're mostly scared of what society will say, what my parents will say. So it's put them in that small space of always being fear, of always being timid. Of course, who dare you to talk about condom? A young person like you, what are you doing with condom? So I make sure I expose certain girls and they go with this message to their different, communities and schools to talk about condom, to talk about menstrual hygiene, helping girls to create reusable pads and sort of that. When you look at HIV and AIDS, it's affecting young people, especially young women. When you look at the STI, it's among young people. So empowering my peers and other young people to work on this issue, then we'll have a positive action. Most of the time, sex education is not being discussed, to girls or young people in general because of society sees it as a taboo. But Education Plus has empowered us to create that platform where we can discuss these issues with girls and also give them a platform where they can recommend solutions to help improve their sexuality. So I want us to empower millions of girls, not only in Sierra Leone, but in Africa. Education makes you to realize your rights and no one trample upon it. So for me, girls getting educated, well, even if they don't go through the formal system, but they have that awareness, they know their right, they know that, okay, if I do this, that and that, it will be beneficial. The future is now and the future is us.
Thank you. Thank you. Very powerful. Oh, girls are powerful. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Her Excellency, Ms. Isata Mahoy, Minister of Gender and Children's Affairs of Sierra Leone. Isata has many years of experience in advocacy, in research, on women, youth, and children's issues. She coordinated a West African Network for Peace Building in Sierra Leone and holds a PhD in economic policy. Welcome, Ms. Hatta.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Standing here is not a mistake because I've been on this for decades through since my formative years. And I'm so pleased being here with you today. And I feel that it's time for me to be able to also join the campaign again against fighting against AIDS and among young people. Before becoming a minister of government, I used to be a civil society activist, also a lecturer at the university. So some of my interventions at the university were organizing roundtable discussions and also some debates. And most times the debates that we'll organize on sex for grade, which are also linked to young people getting HIV. Because when you offer sex for grade, sometimes the lecturers can be so demanding that you cannot negotiate what how you want to have sex with them. So they decide and you just succumb. So this is one of the things that I've been fighting against. And also as a consultant, I've done some work for UNAIDS several times. I was the national consultant for the Gender Transformative Assessment, the GATT, which led me to understand that there are many traditional norms when it comes to communities, understanding the realities of how young people get in HIV. One of this is there are some communities in Sierra Leone, well, very few, where we have youth-friendly centers where young people should go for information and access to services that will help them protect themselves from HIV. So in some of the centers, it will interest you to know that they will be just lying there barely. People do not go there. A lot of young people do not access them. Why? Mentality, the mindset of the communities. When they see young people going to the centers, they perceive them to be, he or she is already sexually active, or they are sex workers. Why would they go into a center like this where they talk only about sex? And so the young people shy away from attending, going to those places, and it becomes problematic, and their vulnerability increases because they don't get the information that is required. And worst is most of the centers are placed within the government hospitals. So when they see people go there, a lot of people have access to the hospital. When they see, they go and report you to your family or your parent that, oh, I saw your girl going in there. So she must be X, Y, Z. So the mentality of people is key when we want to fight against HIV and AIDS. So changing the mindset is something that we need to focus on. And for the UNAIDS also, I conducted a study on sex work among adolescents, young boys and girls. I mean, interested to know that girls as young as 8, 9 go into sex work in Sierra Leone. Pathetic, pathetic. As a researcher, I would almost cry sometimes when I interview these young girls, when they recount their history, why they have become sex workers and why it is difficult for them to go back into normal life because this is all the life they know. And it's risky, you know, so you tend to know that you will lose in a population that you consider to be our future. If you keep losing them to the pandemic, then it becomes something very critical for the world. So for me, I've got those experiences, and I believe that if we all can act now, it will make a lot of sense for us, and it will help us. So the country director of UNAIDS in Sierra Leone has been very, very much active in there. He has been promoting, he is a big promoter of GardNet. In fact, today is his birthday. Happy birthday, Isaac, if you're watching us. Today is his birthday, and today they are dedicating this day to him to open to do the official opening of GADNET's office, because this is an organization that's in nurtures, and is very proud. So they gave him this day to officially open their office that they are moving into. He has been very much supportive on HIV issues in Sierra Leone, and we so appreciate him and we miss him when he lives there. So I just want to take us through what the Education Plus initiative is like in Sierra Leone. Like, for instance, we saw that Sierra Leone was one of the first countries to announce its participation in this Education Plus initiative. And since then, the country has made significant progress on all 5 pillars. And the country's specific pillar number 6 is empowering girl-led initiatives, which we identified as a gap in the global initiative as a standalone pillar. Permit me to highlight a few countries' achievements. In pillar 1, the completion of quality secondary education. Governments provided free quality education so that it will motivate people, families, even the girls, to go to school. And then also, it has led to an increase in the enrollments. Before now, in Sierra Leone, what we used to have is many families do not send their girl child to school. They don't send their girl child to school because they feel that even if she goes to school, and so what? She will still become a wife material. So better still, at age 12, 13, we give her hand in marriage and make money. So this was the perception of communities in Sierra Leone of how people think. So some families don't send their girl child to school. But with this free quality education, you realize that there is now an increase in the enrollment of girls in school, and the retention rate is also very high. Why do we have retention rates? Also, there's the school feeding program as well, which is there. And we are looking at how food also motivates families to send their children in school, especially in the primary school, your first 6 years before going into junior secondary school. So it helps you a lot, and it helps reduce the poverty burden on the families as well. But the challenge with that is that it's not every school in Sierra Leone or every public school that have that support as well. So there is that gap that we need to address so that we'll get more girls in school. We'll also encourage them to stay till after the first 6 years, because as they proceed, then you realize that they become more motivated, because government provided also the STEM scholarships for young girls, for girls from secondary school to you finish education. Your college education. So if you are in the STEM courses like engineering, science, and this, then you realize that more girls also have applied to some of these courses. So it's important to also encourage them in that aspect. And under the radical inclusion, we have what we call bringing pregnant girls back to school. So with this, we also see that we have retained young girls, even when they have become pregnant. So we gave them the opportunity as a government for them to be able to participate in education. At least they will also be empowered and better their lives. So education and HIV goes a long way, because when they are also educated and have awareness on certain issues like HIV or their well-being or their reproductive and sexual rights, it also helps them to become very much assertive, and also know how to negotiate when it comes to negotiating for sex as well. So for me, Sierra Leone is doing a lot, and we have made tremendous progress, and the country still remain committed in terms of working with the international organizations, and UNAIDS is part of them, to ensure that we help to reduce the infection among young girls. One last thing that I want to mention is the issue of adolescent safe spaces where they access the services. We need to have a lot of them in the country so that, and maybe taken outside the government spaces and make it more attractive, like including other recreational facilities that are there so that people will not see them as only going there for sexual education, but also to learn other things. So this is the message from Sierra Leone. And as you've seen, we have very active young people who are now engaged into promoting adolescent girls' work in Sierra Leone. So we want to see more of this so that it helps change the narrative. Thank you.
So much, Minister Isata. We admire Sierra Leone's policy of radical inclusion. We're seeing more countries taking the example of Senegal and giving girls their chance to stay in school, even when they get pregnant. Thank you. Let's now turn to and listen to a young woman leader, Ms. Catherine Nyambura, who leads as programs director at Athena Network. If you are virtual and on youth spaces in Africa, you wouldn't have missed seeing Catherine there. Catherine describes herself as a Pan-African feminist. I must say that's my definition of myself too. And has worked on SRHR, adolescent health, HIV/AIDS, women's rights, GBV, the whole range of issues, and has been honored. Is a Mandela Fellowship alumna and has been named one of the 5 young African women change makers to know. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Good morning, friends, excellencies, and fellow feminists in the room. As I've been introduced, I'm the program director for Athena Network, and I was given a challenging topic to showcase to you young women's leadership and articulate returns on investing in voice, agency, and choice. And I believe from the bio, I don't have to showcase returns. I just have to make a case for why we need to continue investing and amplifying young women's leadership. At Athena, we stand on a rich feminist story, believing that adolescent girls and young women in our diversity are best placed to assess our HIV prevention, care, and treatment needs, and to inform design, implement, and evaluate interventions, policies, and frameworks. As a global membership network, we are embedded within global, regional, and national networks and organizations of women living with HIV and girls living with HIV and networks of women and girls from key populations. And so as a team, I'd like to let you know that our global team is 80% adolescent girls, young women below 35 from Africa. And we have primarily based our programming and country work in Eastern and Southern Africa. And starting from this year, we're going to expand to West and Central Africa. And why does this need to happen? Because I'm not here to articulate and make an investment case for why we must invest in adolescent girls and young women. I am here to show you why we must continue. As girls and young women living with HIV through the polycrisis of economic turmoil, multiple pandemic, I want to highlight that for us, HIV is ever so present and a daily lived reality. And as you have heard from all the statistics, girls are most at risk, but they are also showcasing leadership. We're showcasing leadership in what prevention, care, and treatment innovation looks like. We're showcasing investment in where scale-up needs to go. We're showcasing investment in where we need to rethink our policies and programming, in where we need to invest our research efforts. As we were confirmed by COVID-19, pandemics and epidemics reinforced existing inequalities across race, gender, and across countries. And for us, the threat to reversal of gains made throughout years of investment in HIV prevention, care, and treatment is not looming anymore. It is real. through the possibility of initiatives such as PEPFAR possibly not being renewed. Athena was one of the partners who implemented the DREAMS initiative in Kenya and Uganda. And it's sad for us to see that there's less money going into such initiatives that have been showcased to go to really impact adolescent girls and young women's lives. And just to let you know that adolescent girls and young women's organizations are the least funded. We know that only less than 5% funding of gender equality goes to women's rights organization. Even less goes to young feminist-led organization. But we have seen through the video that the impact that this have in terms of centering leadership and centering a choice and voice is that it's not just decentering individuals. We need to keep the ones who are most affected, the ones who are most impacted, leading the response. We're not here to ask for leadership. We're here to offer leadership, to co-lead alongside you, and to show you what the next and the current phase of leadership looks like. So please meet us halfway. Continue to uphold your end of the bargain. We'll continue to innovate alongside you. We'll continue to stretch the little dollars together to have most impact. And why are we leading? Over the last years, we have seen the past couple of years, we have seen a very well-coordinated, increasingly vocal, conservative effort to undermine the progress we have made, the very precarious gains on gender equality. We have seen threats of undoing and repealing laws on FGM. We have seen threats of undoing of not equal representation, despite that being guaranteed in most of our countries. But most importantly, we have seen this fight at the forefront of the HIV epidemic and the response at the forefront of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And we have seen this threat criminalize certain populations of women and girls. So we would like for you to continue sustaining the political commitment to uphold the laws through our ambitious agreed conclusions, through a reinstatement and recommitment to the Women and Girl HIV Resolution 60/2. And we would also like for this to be a call to action that let the next 6 years towards achieving SDGs not be business as usual. Let us move from commitment to action and also putting the money where our mouth is. Because as girls and young women, we are at the front line of our communities responding and subsidizing where the investments don't exist. So we don't just come, we also bring our time, our bodies, and our lives at stake. We are leaders, but also we are experts and professionals. So we'd like for us to be regarded as such and for you to continue investing in our collectivity because we are at the table with you and we are not waiting for the baton to be passed. We are already taking it up and co-leading alongside you. And I want to appreciate all the African governments who continue to commit, but also who will continue to take us along because we are at the forefront, but we are also coming to continue this journey with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have two last sayings. One is do your best until you know better. When you know better, do better. And none of us is free until all of us are free. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. Very powerful words. And you remind us how important it is to keep funding coming to women's autonomous organizing. We can't say we are leaving no one behind when funding for women's rights, girls' rights organizing is going. Thank you. Thank you. Now I want us to turn to our next speaker. Our next speaker will be my sister, the Honorable Betty Amongi, Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development of Uganda. Betty is very well known in my country, Uganda, long-standing member of parliament, held various ministries like Minister for Lands and Housing before being Minister of Gender, has served in many interparliamentary networks, is known around the world as a defender of women's rights, human rights, democracy, democratic governance. Betty, thank you for coming and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, my sister, the Undersecretary and the Executive Director of the UNAIDS, the UN Women, and all of you in your various capacities, the ministers. I want to first of all thank UNAIDS and others for bringing us together this morning. Our Education Plus initiative in the context of my country is being coordinated by UNICEF, UN Women, and UNFPA, who have formed a partnership with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Gender, and Office of the Prime Minister. So this initiative is focusing on a commitment to tackle and take action to keep girls in school and to focus on ensuring that adolescent girls are given information in respect to their reproductive health, reproductive support, and HIV/AIDS related information. Now, in Uganda, I don't want to go to the global statistics because the global statistics was already articulated in the concept paper. But sometimes we talk about these global statistics and forget that the reality is just with us. Just before Women's Day, a group of girls came to my office from this initiative and was brought by UNFPA and UNICEF. And I was very reluctant. I first said, let them go to the Minister of State for Youth and Children's Affairs. But then they insisted that, no, we want to see you, the Minister of Gender, Labor, and Social Development. So within the time I had, I said, okay, I'll give you 1 hour. The 1 hour turned to 3 hours. Why? Because these girls who had come together under these initiatives were giving very powerful stories. So they came with this written text, and I told them, no, put the text, put the speech down. I want each one of you to talk to me. And the first girl told me she lives in the slum of the city, somewhere called Namuongo. And she had to leave school because her mother and 7 siblings staying in the slum did not have even what to eat. Now, Uganda has a universal primary education and universal secondary education. But this lady and girl from the slum with 7 siblings, they could not even go to a free primary education. This is really to tell you that sometimes we put these policies and programs and we take it for granted that once you put free education, then people will be able to go to that school. But it's beyond the free education, because the girl told me we didn't have what to eat. And so my mother, because I'm a firstborn, asked me to get a boyfriend. And that boyfriend has to support my sibling with school requirements to go to the free school, because you have to buy books, you have to transport yourself to reach the school. So she dropped out of school, she got a boyfriend. When she got a boyfriend, the boyfriend infected her with HIV. So when she one day started feeling sick and went to the hospital, and somebody said, no. The doctor said, let's test everything, including HIV/AIDS. She said, no, I can't have HIV/AIDS. But then the doctor insisted and they tested, and she was HIV positive at the age of 14 years. And so while she succeeded in getting money from the boyfriend to support the sibling to go to school, she ended up HIV positive. And she told me, then I didn't know what to do. So somebody told me there's an NGO called I Care. And I said, let me go to that NGO. And this NGO happened to be supported by UNICEF and UNFPA and was under the initiative of Education Plus. That's the NGO that took her hands, started supporting her, gave her facilities, took her back to school, and she completed Now she has a degree in finance and is working as an accountant with that same NGO. So this is what we are talking about. It's not caste, it's not, sometimes we need to go deeper into the policy. And so for us in Uganda, we said, let us look at poverty. How do we reduce poverty? How do we ensure that the parents have the money to take the children to school, the girls to school, so that they don't need to subject girls to support them as laborers? Because that is what happens when parents are poor. Then the first issue is, who will help me in my farm? And it will be the girls. That will be the first to be left home to cook. The boys might be given what to do in the farm and can still run back to school, but the girls will not. So we've prioritized the issue of poverty with several programs, because when somebody has money, and especially the women, we are targeting intervention for women in business, because we know when women have money, they will not segregate sending girls and boys. They will ensure, they will say, I don't want my girl to be like me. I don't want my daughter to be like me. They will most likely send their girls to school. And we've seen this research that most of the women whom we have uplifted from poverty, when you go back to them to ask them, what is it that they did with their money? All the women will tell you, I paid my girls and my children to school. The second issue which we've looked at is, of course, the universal primary education and universal secondary education, which we give free education, but of course, you need requirements. But also to underscore the importance of the school infrastructure. Is the school infrastructure engendered for girls? Because sometimes the girls themselves will reach the school, they don't have where to go and change their pads. They are fearing because the toilets are the same. There's no toilet for the girls. There's nowhere to put your pads. So when they're in periods, they will then tend not to come to school. So our school infrastructure is now a policy that when you're constructing a school, you must have those sanitary facilities that are separate for both girls and boys, but also you must have a matron for the girls, changing rooms, and space where girls can be able to clean themselves in case they have a problem with menstrual issues. We also have intensified education and communication and advocacy on HIV/AIDS. We've now opened schools for NGOs, civil society, and any person who would want to give information on sexual and reproductive health, on issues to do with HIV/AIDS. And so this we see is also working. For girls that have dropped out of school, we have said we need to skill you. We have a comprehensive skilling programs for tailoring, for bakery, for welding, all sorts of skills that are for free under my Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, and the president has initiated his own program in the office of the president only for girl child skilling nationally. And after the skilling, they give you money to buy the tools to go and start a business of your own. So that program is also supporting so many girls who have dropped out of the school, because for us, the dropout rate for girls is very high as they go up. We've also initiated a program under the Vice President's office with the First Lady and the Prime Minister and myself, which is a high-level program for women in leadership to ensure that we do a national campaign for ending teenage pregnancy, ensuring that we have girls have a second chance. post-COVID, we had so many girls who had dropped out of school. So with that, we started this initiative. And for girls who could sit examination even when they were pregnant, there are even those who produce while they are sitting exam. They were taken to the hospital. They were allowed to come back and sit. 5 of them produced while sitting national examination. They were taken to hospital. They were given extended time. They did, and I can assure you, 2 of them were the best in their region. And now they have been admitted. One of them has been admitted in one of the topmost schools. And that is the second chance. We have what we call the second chance policy for girls who've got pregnant. So advocacy, budget allocation, issues around ensuring that you end poverty, we see that it is important in ensuring that we scale this initiative. So this is what I can share, and I want to thank you for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Betty. And we also learn a lot from Uganda's affirmative action for girls in education and other sectors. Thank you. Now, friends, excellencies, we're going to have 3 speakers from the floor before we close, and our closing remarks will be made by Nyarazai, the Deputy Executive Director of UN Women. So stay where you are. We'll bring the mic to you, to our friends speaking from the floor. The next one is going to be Ms. Moto Young Francisca, Director for Promotion and Protection of Family Affairs, Cameroon. You have the floor. Okay. Thank you. You have the floor, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Executive Director, Your Excellencies in your various grades. I'm taking the floor on behalf of the Honorable Minister, Professor Marie-Theresa Benaondoa, who was unable to make it. She confirmed her invitation, but she could not make it. So I'm delighted to take the floor on behalf of the Minister at this very important event facilitated by the 68th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. I thank the Executive Director of UNAIDS for inviting me to share Cameroon's experience in advancing girls' and women's empowerment, particularly girls' education. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, HIV/AIDS is one of the leading causes of death among women of reproductive age worldwide. In addition to their biological vulnerability, HIV disproportionately affects women and adolescent girls due to their unequal social, cultural, and economic status in society. Gender inequality, gender-based violence, and harmful traditional practices reinforce unequal power dynamics with men and boys and reduce women's choices and opportunities, as well as their access to information, health and social services, education, and employment. According to the results of the 2018 Demographic and Social Survey, published by the National Institute of Statistics, Cameroon continues to be in a situation of generalized epidemic characterized by an average HIV prevalence estimated at 2.7. The incidence of HIV infection remains high among women than men. The 15 to 24 age bracket is the most exposed to the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, having joined the Education Plus initiative, our country has implemented a number of interventions, the main ones being the signing of by the Minister of Secondary Education, a circular on the modalities for the management of student pregnancies in public and private secondary schools. Initiation and implementation of the Clean School project that aims at keeping the school environment clean with emphasis on clean and gender-sensitive toilets, taking menstrual hygiene into consideration. Revision of school curriculum for teachers with the inclusion of modules on sexual and reproductive health as well as comprehensive sexual education. Another initiative is granting of scholarships to girls and implementation of school feeding program in view of maintaining children in school, especially girls. Another, exemption of payment of obligatory fees and contributions of parent-teacher associations in public or government schools for orphans. We'll also have the training of pupils and trainees in women's empowerment and family centers and multi-purpose youth empowerment centers as peer educators for the fight against HIV/AIDS, STIs, and GBV in school and within communities. The development and implementation of the national strategy to combat, excuse me, gender-based violence and the National Action Plan to eliminate female genital mutilation. The list is inexhaustible, and we could say that the activities or the list of the inexhaustible list is enhanced by strong institutional measures undertaken by the government, such as the adoption of the national gender policy, the inclusion of gender in national development frameworks like Vision 2035, the National Development Strategy enlarged examination of performance and programming sessions coupled with the issuing of a gender report attached to the finance law. Efforts deployed to translate the political will of the head of state to concrete actions have produced commendable results. However, much more is still to be done to further advance the education of girls and to prevent HIV and AIDS. Efforts have been truncated by persistent crises, particularly security crises in the Northwest, Southwest, and Far North regions. There is therefore need for adequate human and material as well as financial resources to effectively implement existing strategies, programs, plans, and projects to end and to scale up where necessary. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let us now hear from Advocate Joyce Maluleke, who's Director General of the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disabilities in South Africa. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to steal 15 seconds from the minister's talk. I just want to give you a case study. I got pregnant when I was 15 years, 6 months. It wasn't rape. It was a poor choice. I think I just want to show you that it's not about rape, but also sometimes young girls not knowing what is right or wrong. It's important to empower young girls. At the age of 20, I had 2 children. However, I decided one day that this is not my life and went back to school, started from grade 11, which then was standard 9. And now I'm the Director General of the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. I just want to show that given a chance, when you give a young girl a chance, she'll make it. I am a Director General. It's a very senior post in government because I got a second chance. So it's important to give girls a second chance. But the most important thing is not a second chance. The most important thing is prevention. Let's educate them so that they can be able to make correct choices. Thank you very much. I'll then speak what the minister was supposed to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You inspire us, and thank you for sharing your story. Sorry? Oh,
I
you're
am-
still speaking. Please go
Yes.
ahead. I wasn't
I'm
seeing
speaking on
you,
behalf
so
of our minister.
please
uh,
continue.
Minister Lindiwe Zulu, Minister of Social Development. She was supposed to speak, however, she's not able to make it. So I'm speaking on her behalf. Honorable Chair, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, teenage pregnancy is a multifaceted problem that requires an intersectoral and multi-sectoral intervention. It is not just pregnant teenagers' problem either. But the scourge is also a societal problem that negatively impacts on the future of the country as a whole. This necessitates a need for various role players to come on board in addressing the problem, whilst noting that government has the primary responsibility to put mechanisms in place in tackling the rising number of teenage pregnancy. This must be done in collaboration with civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, development partners, private sector, and society as a whole. This is critical given the complex nature of the problem and the fact that the family is also involved sometimes. The unacceptably high levels of teenage pregnancy in South Africa is an infringement on the rights of the girl child as enshrined in our constitution. Teenage pregnancies pose health risk for teenage mothers, their babies, their families, as well as communities. Teenage mothers are more susceptible to having medical, social, and emotional problems in comparison to adult mothers. High rates of teenage pregnancy also affect the community's, society's welfare as they increase the rate of school dropout, decrease graduation rates, and increase unemployment rate. The impact on family is that it may overwhelmingly lead to a breakdown in family, not only for the teen mothers, but also for the generations to come. Preventing and addressing the problem of teenage pregnancies would most, among others, contribute to promotion and protection of the rights of the girl child, ensuring gender equality and curb poverty cycle. Furthermore, the government is embarking on implementing an economic initiative to empower young girls economically. Such programs recognize the link between poverty and teenage pregnancy. They are aimed at breaking the cycle of poverty that often continues to early teenage pregnancy, therefore promoting and protecting the rights of the girl child is paramount in tackling gender equality and focusing on the national data as well. Government has put together a program of action to address the scourge. In doing that, there is need for coordination in order to harness and redirect all efforts to the hardest hit areas. The focus ought to be on prevention, early intervention, and impact evidence-based programmatic interventions. The draft prevention strategy on gender-based violence and femicide is addressing the issues of teenage pregnancy. In addition, government programs on prevention and early intervention programs include Ezabasha Dialogue, Teenage Dialogues, Risiha, Community-Based Prevention, She Decides, Mother and Daughter Dialogue, Father and Son Dialogues, Men and Positive Role Model, Everyday Heroes, Men and Boys Assemblies, and other programs such as YOLO. YOLO is You Only Live Once. Chomi is Friends, how friends influence each other. Kimoja, I'm Good Without Drugs, as well as outreach programs for young mothers. I think there's a lot that I can share. However, just to say that we in South Africa are focusing on families to ensure that family is the support, the basic support that young girls can be able to get before you even go to government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience. Let us now hear from one more speaker. My friend Begonia, who is the UNESCO Director for Gender, Global Director for Gender. Begonia, good to see you after so long.
I know, it's great to be here with another hat, but working on the same issues. Excellencies, good morning, bonjour à tous et toutes. Executive Director, Winnie Mendiva, it's a pleasure to be here with you and your team. Fellow sister agencies, of course, UN Women, Area Side, and the whole team. UNICEF, UNFPA, greetings from our Director General, Madame Audrey Soule. She was not able to be here, but she has asked me to convey her message and greetings. I think we have a joint message, all of us, related to the extremely relevant importance of education plus, meaning a lot more things than the formal education. I think that we have seen the value of working together. I think that is very important when we work together, how all our mandates, all our competencies, all our expertise from young people, from governments, from institutions, from the UN, how we can do much better. From UNESCO, you know that for us, education is a particular special commitment. And we have joined, we are a strong partner of this Education Plus. For us, is part of our core heart mandate. And we are working on with all of you in this O3, as we call it, our rights, our lives, our future, in more than 35 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. What is the added value we bring to the table to join your added value? Is related to advocacy and is related to implementation. In advocacy, we call it jointly with our sister agencies, the process towards the East and Southern African commitment and the West and Central African commitment to address HIV, gender-based violence, and broader sexual and reproductive health issues through comprehensive sexuality education and SHR services. We also try to co-lead with you the development of an AU continental strategy on education for health and well-being on adolescents and young people. And on implementation, the O3 program places education at the core of interventions to address HIV, adolescent pregnancy, child marriage, and gender-based violence. I think that we can say we support more than 20 million learners benefiting from life skills-based HIV and sexuality. 16 countries develop and implemented education sector policies to address school-related gender-based violence. I think that we have to continue. We heard very clear message, and I think with the work of all of us, I think we will be able to achieve education for all, education plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Begonia. And now, last but not least, oh, is there another speaker? No. Nyanazai, you have listened very carefully to everybody. And now please give us a closing remark. And you may not need to stand up. Do you want to? Oh, thank you so much. Nyarazai survived a horrible accident.
We take all the tentative steps, but then we take the bold step.
Thank you.
So we start tentatively, but then we become very bold.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Deputy Executive Director of UN Women.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My sister Winnie, when the UN launched Education Plus, it was before I joined the UN. I was with my colleagues in Rosaria Memorial Trust. I was in Kenya. And as we always do, when something good happens, you feel like singing. So we sing, Twendembele wa mama wo, and we would sing, we were dancing, we were clapping, we were happy. We were happy that the United Nations had thought about us, the rights holders. today, I find myself in the United Nations for the second time. And now being part of co-leading Education Plus. So my executive director, Sima Bahus, immediately said, Nyaradza, you have arrived. Among the many things that is within your responsibility is to keep the struggle around our responses to HIV for women and girls. And UN Women is a co-sponsor. So I had to learn that, to learn and relearn that in addition to singing, we acknowledge our leadership. The honorable ministers, I see you. I respect you. All the guests, I recognize you. Thank you so much for this morning. When Education Plus is what has happened in the last 2 minutes, I am unable to climb the stairs because there's a barrier. Girls are unable to have their full potential to education because there are barriers. But those barriers are dismantleable. We can dismantle the barriers. Just as you have moved this lectern from here to here, you have dismantled the barrier. You have created an enabling framework. That is what we are talking about. So this morning, we said behind every infection are embedded realities of gender discrimination, of a disempowerment of women, of a disempowerment of the mothers and the aunties. Behind every infection is inequalities. Behind every statistic are issues of patriarchy, of power dynamics, of ability of girls to make a choice, informed choice. We have this morning said behind every story is lack of resources and lack of access to public services adequately, qualitatively, comprehensively. That is what we have said this morning. We have also said this morning we are here to scale up. We have heard our various countries, the 15 champion countries. We have heard our ministers from Sierra Leone, from Uganda, from Benin, from Luxembourg. We've heard South Africa and other countries. They said, we are here as leaders. Education Plus is about public political leadership, to speak out, to speak up, to advance the cause, and to resource, so that the issues around education and HIV are part of the national priorities, part of the regional priorities. And here at CSW, it's indeed part of the global priority. We've also heard that there is a clear intentionality on focusing on Africa. Why? Because the data is telling the vulnerabilities and risks of adolescent girls. The epicenter of the risk and vulnerabilities and the numbers for women and girls. That's why it's being centered within the context of Africa. We've also heard that we need to scale up policies, laws, and our national mechanisms for response. And at the same time, to be courageous. We need collective courage in a practical way to transform the negative social norms and scale up the positive social norms. Because it's not only that norms are negative, we also have positive social norms that needs to be scaled up. And at UN Women, we are very excited about our work with the Council of Traditional Leaders in Africa, which many other UN agencies have been working on with. We are also saying we need to scale up education, the HIV response, and also to scale up the support to women's organizations and networks. That has been very clear and equivocal and very direct. So we are meeting at CSW, 10 o'clock. We are running to other sessions. You know, as UN Women, we are making a few asks, which are very immediate. The first is, we are at CSW. Let's come out of the Commission on the Status of Women with a bold, agreed conclusions that center the work around education, that center the work around women and girls and HIV. In the agreed conclusions, because the agreed conclusions will not only give us very solid, actionable interventions in our countries and communities, but a forward-looking perspective into the Pact for the Future, into the financing for development, into the discussion around climate, COP29. So let's have solid, bold commitments embedding the critical issues that we have agreed on relating to Education Plus. We are also saying, let's support the resolution that SADC is supporting and leading on women, girls, and HIV. Let's support that work solidly, concretely, so that there's a consensus for us again and again to confirm the issues of women, girls, and HIV. So as UN Women, we are fully and clearly saying these are the immediate, in the next 2 weeks, it's achievable and doable. But in the long term, 3 key messages. Let's stop the wars. We can't talk of education and HIV and scaling up if we have the situation we have in the Sahel, the situation we have in northern Mozambique, the situation we have in the Sudan. The situation is still not as stable in DRC. Let's stop the wars, because that's one sure way of a long-term sustainable intervention. Let's shift the narrative from poverty to opportunities with the assets that we have. Because Africa is not poor, but African women and girls are licking a spoon they do not even own. So let's shift the discourse so that the resources also available in the countries are prioritizing for investing in education, investing in HIV prevention, investing in girls with the resources that we have on the continent. The oil, the diamonds, we have critical resources on the continent. So for Africa, yes, it's about poverty, but it's also about reshifting that conversation on resources in a clear and solid way. And this is why financing is a critical agenda for this CSW. In closing, for many of us, including me, the struggles for education and HIV are about our lives. They are not a job nor an option. They're about our true being. And therefore, just seeing Education Plus says it's centering the understanding that this is about people, real breathing people who have dreams. It's not just some people we don't know, it's us in this room. So as at UN Women, we are very clear that this is about human rights. This is about people. This is about reclaiming the we, the people, which is the core of our Bill of Rights. This is why UN Women moving forward is pivoting more, focusing more of its attention to countries, to communities, and to regions, while strengthening the normative work that we do, and while committed to the collaborative, coordinated work within the United Nations. We are part of the UN, and indeed, we are ably led by UNAIDS on this response, and we thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those closing remarks. And I love particularly that sensation of feeling like singing when Education Plus was launched. I love that. And of course, the asks from UN Women. And I hope we all feel energized out of this breakfast this morning. And wishing you all having a good day. The meeting is ended.